Hi everyone, this presentation is about Dr. Carol Pilgrim, a leading female behavioral analyst of this time. First, I will briefly discuss her education and credentials. In 1978, she received a Bachelor of Science from the Virginia Polytechnic Institute. In 1983, she received her Master's of Science out of the University of Florida, and in 1987, she received her PhD out of the University of Florida as well, which launched her career in behavioral analysis. She is a very distinguished researcher, lecturer, writer, mentor, and educator. She has held many leadership positions over the years and has also received many honors and accolades from within the field of psychology and ABA. She has served as the president of the International Association of Applied Behavioral Analysis, including its Southeastern chapter, and she's also received their Outstanding Mentor of the Year award, just to name a few. Currently, Dr. Pilgrim is a professor at UNC Wilmington. She also serves as a mentor to ABA students, as well as working on her own research. She is primarily focused on experimental and applied behavior analysis in her research. She has focused on stimulus equivalence, stimulus control, class formation, and translational behavioral analysis. She is probably best known for her development and modification of relational stimulus control in children and adults. As I mentioned before, Dr. Pilgrim is not only a noted researcher, but she is also a noted lecturer and has written and published several pieces of literature of her experiments as well as commentaries on current and past issues facing ABA. I've detailed a few here for you. These first two talk about her work with stimulus control with children, so her acquisition of arbitrary conditional discriminations by young normally developing children and her reversal of baseline relations and stimulus equivalence to children are both manuscripts in which she details her work around stimulus control and children. These next three are more of commentaries that she has put together considering some current issues facing ABA. The first, she considers stimulus control and equivalence, the current and past definitions, and whether or not these need to be altered in the face of current research. Next, she talks about translational behavioral analysis and its benefits in terms of making connection between ABA and other current societal problems such as disease prevention, particularly with cancer. And lastly, she talks about MOs and SDs. What makes a person's behavioral repertoire and why? What patterns can we see, if any? One of the most noted pieces of information that I gleaned from Dr. Pilgrim is her push for current students of behavioral analysis and current practitioners in the field to return to the basics. She has constantly pushed for people to not forget the fundamentals of former leading practitioners, including Skinner and Johnston, who was one of her mentors. It is really important for the field to not become saturated with ideas that are not conditioned to the original work of radical behaviorists. It is important that this happens to pave the way for future behavior analysis and people like her to make their mark on the field. Now, a bit more detail about some of her work with stimulus control and equivalence. She's conducted experiments in which children were given simple match-to-sample activities. So for example, here we have a child who was given the written word fox, and they had to match it with a photo of a fox or a verbal statement of the word fox. She found that adding additional verbal prompts within the experiments helped students make the connection that saying a word, writing a word, and pointing to the word are the same thing, but additional verbal prompts were needed for the learner to make this connection. As exemplified here, this student has figured out that saying the word fox, writing the word fox, and pointing to a picture of a fox is the same thing, where verbal prompts are needed by the teacher to help make this connection. This next slide was probably for me some of the most interesting pieces of information that I found out about Dr. Pilgrim. It consists about her work around translational behavior analysis and what she's done to make a connection between cancer prevention and behavior analysis, in that changing people's behavior or altering it could ultimately affect whether or not they get cancer. It has also led doctors and researchers to consider ways in which behavior analysis can be applied to current cancer treatment and also its prevention. If I had the chance to interview Dr. Pilgrim, I would ask her some questions around what her most impactful piece of research has been and why. I would also like to ask her what are some pros and cons of being a researcher versus a direct service provider, what her plans are to extend her research around translational behavior analysis, and what are some practical applications of her research for behavior management, particularly in school-based settings. Dr. Pilgrim is an extremely important leading female practitioner of the field of ABA. She is not only a teacher and a mentor, but also an acclaimed researcher. She has contributed immensely to the field in terms of her research of translational behavior analysis and stimulus control and equivalence. In 2019, she was invited to speak at the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference, which I have pictured here. And the piece that stands out the most to me is that she values her role as a scientist and a researcher equally as much as she values her role as an academic, teacher, and mentor. She sees her role not only to contribute to the field of research, but to also shape and mold future behavior analysts to continue to help the field flourish and grow for the betterment of society. Thank you for listening.